When my father died 7 years ago, he left behind three things: a vintage car collection he'd spent his life building, a beautiful lakefront property that had been in his family for generations, and a daughter who missed him more than words could express. That's me, Diana, and this is the story of how my own family tried to steal my inheritance right from under me. Dad was a master mechanic, the kind who could diagnose an engine problem just by listening. His garage was his sanctuary, filled with tools that felt like extensions of his hands and cars he'd lovingly restored over decades. Every weekend, he'd be out there tinkering with one vehicle or another, teaching me everything he knew. "Pay attention, princess," he'd say, gesturing for me to look closer at whatever he was working on. "Someday all this will be yours, and you'll need to know how to take care of it." I spent countless hours in that garage, learning about carburetors and timing belts, the difference between a flathead and a Phillips screwdriver, and most importantly, the value of patience and attention to detail. While other girls my age were playing with dolls, I was helping Dad restore a 1967 Mustang. My small hands perfect for reaching into tight spaces. Mom never understood our bond or our shared passion for cars. She was more interested in social status, in keeping up appearances. When Dad died of a sudden heart attack at 52, she waited exactly 11 months before marrying Stephen, her tennis instructor who was nearly 15 years her junior. I was 16 when Stephen moved in, bringing with him his 13-year-old daughter Amber from his first marriage. Suddenly, our quiet home became a different place entirely. Stephen and Mom spent money like water, buying new furniture, redecorating every room, trying to erase all traces of Dad's presence. The only places they didn't touch were the garage and a lake house. The garage because it's full of junk anyway, Mom's words, and the lake house because Dad's will had specific provisions about it. Or so I thought. "You can't sell any of it until Diana turns 25, I overheard our family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, telling Mom shortly after Dad's funeral. James was very clear about that. I took comfort in knowing Dad had protected his legacy, had ensured that the things he loved would be preserved for me. I should have known better. I should have gotten copies of all the documents myself, should have paid more attention to the legal details instead of just trusting that everything would be handled properly. But I was 16 and grieving, more concerned with keeping Dad's cars running than with paperwork and legal provisions. Every afternoon after school, I'd head straight to the garage, working on the cars just like he taught me. It was my way of keeping him close, of honoring his memory. Meanwhile, Mom and Stephen threw themselves into transforming Amber from a quiet, bookish girl into their idea of the perfect daughter. Designer clothes, private tennis lessons, cotillion classes, nothing was too expensive when it came to Amber's development. "Diana, honey," Mom would say, eyeing my oil-stained jeans with disapproval. "Would you rather join Amber at her etiquette classes? It would be so much more appropriate than spending all your time in that garage." But I stayed true to what Dad had taught me. I kept his cars running, kept his tools organized just the way he liked them. The other kids at school thought it was weird, a girl spending so much time working on old cars. But I didn't care. Every time I got one of Dad's classics purring like new, I felt like he was right there with me, nodding in approval. After high school, I went to college for mechanical engineering, paying my way by working at a local auto shop. Mom and Stephen didn't offer to help with tuition. All their money was going toward Amber's future. I didn't mind. I was good at what I did, and the shop owner, Mike, appreciated having someone who understood vintage cars. "You've got the touch, kid," he'd say, watching me work. "Just like your old man." I came home as often as I could, mainly to check on the cars and visit the lake house. Each time, I noticed small changes. Tools missing from the garage, parts that had been there before suddenly gone. When I asked Mom about it, she'd wave off my concerns. "Oh, we needed to clear some space," she'd say vaguely. "You can't expect us to keep everything exactly the same forever, Diana." I should have pressed harder, should have demanded answers. But I was busy with school, with work, with trying to build my own life. And honestly, I still couldn't imagine that my own mother would go against Dad's wishes. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my final semester of college when Mom called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Diana, you'll never believe it. Amber's engaged. To Bradley Worthington ILI. You know, the Worthingtons of Worthington Investments." I made appropriate congratulatory noises while mentally calculating how long it would be before I could politely end the call. But Mom wasn't finished. We're planning the most amazing wedding. The country club, a 10-piece orchestra, 500 guests. Of course, it's going to be quite expensive, but Stephen and I have figured out how to manage it. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. Mom, what do you mean you figured it out? Well, she paused, and I could picture her practicing her most persuasive smile. We've had some interest in the lake property, and since it's just sitting there empty most of the time, you can't sell the lake house, I cut in. Dad's will. Oh, that old thing. Stephen had his lawyer look it over. Apparently, there was some problem with how it was filed. Something about improper witnesses or incorrect paperwork. The point is, as James's widow, I have every right to sell it. And really, Diana, it's for the best. Amber needs this wedding to secure her future. Your father would have understood. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Mom, no. You can't. That property has been in Dad's family for generations. He wanted me to have it. Don't be selfish, Diana. Amber is your sister now, and this is her big moment. Besides, her voice took on that dismissive tone I'd grown to hate. What would you do with a lake house anyway? You're always covered in grease, playing with those old cars. This way, at least the property will serve a useful purpose. I hung up without responding, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Dad's voice echoed in my head. Someday all this will be yours. I grabbed my laptop and started searching through old emails, looking for anything from Mr. Patterson, any documentation about Dad's will. That's when I discovered something else. The vintage cars. Dad's pride and joy, the collection he'd spent his life building. Many of them were missing from the insurance documents. I called Mike at the shop, trying to keep my voice steady. Mike, I need a favor. Could you check something for me? Last time you were at my dad's garage, how many cars were there? There was a long pause. Diana, I was wondering when you'd ask about that. They've been selling them off, one by one. I tried to stop them, told them those cars were meant for you, but your stepdad said they had paperwork showing they had the right to sell. The room spun around me as Mike's words sank in. They've been selling Dad's cars. His life's work, his legacy to me, and they've been quietly disposing of it to fund their extravagant lifestyle and now Amber's wedding. I ended the call and sat in silence, staring at nothing. Then I opened my email and wrote 2 messages. The first was to my academic advisor asking for an emergency extension on my final projects. The second was to a lawyer I'd met at the auto shop, a classic car enthusiast who specialized in estate law. Need your help? I wrote. Family inheritance being sold without permission. How soon can we meet? The response came within minutes. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Bring any documentation you have. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad in his garage, teaching me about timing belts and distributors, showing me how to diagnose engine problems by sound and feel. Pay attention, princess, he'd said. Someday all this will be yours. Well, Dad, I thought as I finally drifted off, I'm paying attention now, and I'm not letting them take what you meant for me to have. The law office of Marcus Bennett looked exactly like you'd expect. Leather chairs, dark wood paneling, and walls lined with legal texts. But there was something else too. Framed photos of classic cars, including a gorgeous 1965 Shelby Cobra that made my heart ache. It reminded me of the one Dad and I had been planning to restore together. That's my baby, Marcus said, following my gaze. Spent 3 years bringing her back to life. Your friend Mike tells me you know your way around engines? I nodded, still staring at the photo. My dad taught me everything I know, or at least he tried to before. I swallowed hard. Before they started selling off his collection. Marcus's friendly smile faded, replaced by a look of focused intensity. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. For the next hour, I walked him through it all. Dad's death, the will's provisions about waiting until I was 25, the gradual disappearance of the cars, and now their plan to sell the lake house for Amber's wedding. Do you have a copy of the will? He asked. I shook my head. Mom and Stephen said there were problems with how it was filed. Something about improper witnesses. Marcus frowned. That's concerning. Who was your father's lawyer? Mr. Patterson. But when I tried calling his office yesterday, they said he retired 2 years ago, moved to Florida. George Patterson. Marcus sat up straighter. I know George. He's meticulous about documentation. If he handled your father's will, there's no way there were problems with how it was filed. Hope flickered in my chest. Can you find out for sure? I can do better than that. He reached for his phone. George and I play golf whenever he's in town. Let me give him a call. 20 minutes later, Marcus had answers that made my blood boil. George never retired to Florida, he said grimly. He's been working part-time at his son's firm across town. And he definitely never told your mother there were problems with the will. In fact, he's been trying to reach you for months. Your mother told his office you were studying abroad and couldn't be contacted. My hands clenched into fists. They lied. About everything. It gets worse, Marcus continued. George says your father set up a trust, not just a will. The cars, the lake house, even the tools in the garage. They're all held in trust for you. Your mother and stepfather have no legal right to sell any of it. But they have been selling it, I said, my voice shaking. The cars, the tools. How many laws have they broken? Several. Marcus was already typing on his computer, selling property held in trust without authorization. That's fraud. Using the proceeds for personal benefit? More fraud. Making false statements about the trust's existence? You get the picture. What can we do? First, we need documentation. Records of what's been sold, when to whom, for how much. Bank statements showing where the money went. Then we can file for an emergency injunction to stop the lake house sale and start proceedings to recover what's been taken. I thought about the missing cars, the empty spaces in Dad's garage. Can we get them back? Some maybe, others might be gone for good. But we can get financial compensation, possibly with punitive damages. He looked at me seriously. This won't be easy. They're family. Are you sure you want to pursue this? They stopped being family the moment they started stealing my inheritance, I said firmly. Dad trusted me to take care of his legacy. I won't let him down. The next few weeks were a blur of investigation and documentation. Marcus's team tracked down sales records for 11 of Dad's cars, worth over $800,000 combined. They found receipts for tools and equipment sold at various auctions. Most stunning of all, they discovered the money trail, deposits into Mom and Steven's personal accounts, transfers to wedding vendors, payments for Amber's new car and luxury apartment. Meanwhile, I took a leave of absence from my final semester, promising my professors I'd make up the work over the summer. This was more important. This was about justice. I moved back home, watching Mom and Steven's mounting panic as they realized they couldn't reach the lawyer who'd supposedly found problems with Dad's will, because he didn't exist. They'd forged documents, created a fake law firm's letterhead, all to convince me they had the right to sell my inheritance. Diana, sweetie, Mom cornered me in the kitchen one morning, her smile brittle. About the lake house. I know you're upset, but try to understand. Amber's wedding is so important. It's her chance at a perfect life. Like my life doesn't matter. I kept my voice neutral, recording every word on my phone. Like Dad's wishes don't matter. Your father would have wanted to help his stepdaughter, she insisted. He was generous that way. Really? I pulled out my phone, showing her a photo from my investigation. Is that why you sold his prized 1969 Chevelle to fund your spa weekend in Palm Springs? Because Dad was generous? The color drained from her face. How did you? I know everything, Mom. Every car you sold. Every lie you told. Every dollar you stole. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. We did not steal anything. We are your parents. We have every right. You might want to let go of me, I said quietly. And you might want to talk to a lawyer, a real one this time. That evening, I heard them arguing behind closed doors. Amber's voice joined in, shrill and panicked. What do you mean the wedding might have to be canceled? The Worthingtons will never forgive us. Bradley's mother has already ordered custom ice sculptures. We'll figure something out, Stephen promised. Diana's just being difficult. She'll come around. I smiled grimly, thinking of the documents in Marcus's office. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I went to the garage early, wanting to spend time with what remained of Dad's collection. In the corner, under a dusty tarp, I found his favorite, a 1957 Chevy Bel Air we'd restored together during my high school years. They hadn't sold this one, probably because it needed work. The engine was in pieces, parts scattered across his old workbench. I ran my hand along the car's faded paint, remembering Dad's voice. Patience, princess. Sometimes you have to take things apart completely before you can put them back together the right way. He'd been talking about engines, but the lesson felt especially relevant now. I was taking apart the lies, the fraud, the betrayal, piece by piece. Soon, I'd have enough evidence to rebuild the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bringing George Patterson. Time to drop the hammer. I texted back a simple, and got to work on the Bel Air's engine. Tomorrow would bring chaos, but today I could lose myself in the familiar rhythm of wrenches and ratchets, honoring Dad's memory the best way I knew how. As I worked, I heard Mom and Stephen leaving for a wedding planning session at the country club. They had no idea that while they were picking out flower arrangements and table settings, Marcus's team was serving subpoenas to every auction house, every dealer, every buyer who'd been involved in their scheme. The truth was coming, whether they were ready or not. The morning of the meeting, I arrived at Marcus's office early. Through the window, I watched Mom, Stephen, and Amber pull up in Stephen's BMW. They looked confident, probably expecting to steamroll over any objections I might have about the lake house sale. Mom was wearing her handling difficult situations outfit, a powder blue suit that made her look both authoritative and approachable. Stephen had on his tennis club blazer, a symbol of the status he so desperately craved. Amber was clutching a wedding planning binder thick enough to stop bullets. Marcus met them in the lobby while I waited in the conference room with George Patterson. The elderly lawyer looked nothing like the frail retiree my mother had described. His eyes were sharp, his grip firm as he shook my hand. "Your father was a good man," he said quietly. "He trusted your mother to honor his wishes. I'm sorry she didn't." Before I could respond, the door opened. Mom's confident smile faltered when she saw George. Stephen's face went slack with shock. Amber just looked confused. "Mr. Patterson?" Mom's voice was higher than usual. "What are you doing here?" "Interesting question, Mrs. Mitchell," Marcus said, closing the door behind them. "Especially since you told your daughter he was retired in Florida." "There must be some misunderstanding," Stephen started, but Marcus cut him off. "Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss." They sat. I noticed Mom's hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her skirt. She knew. She knew exactly what was coming. Marcus opened a thick folder. "Let's start with the trust your late husband established for Deanna, the one you claimed didn't exist." "We never," Mom began, but George Patterson spoke over her. "I have here the original trust documents, properly witnessed and filed. James Mitchell was very specific about his wishes. The entire car collection, the lake property, and all related assets were to be held in trust for Deanna until she turned 25. He slid copies across the table. I watched as Mom and Stephen's faces grew paler with each page. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, "we have documented evidence of unauthorized sales of trust assets." He began laying out photographs. The 1969 Chevelle sold to fund a spa vacation. The 1965 Mustang sold to pay for Amber's apartment. The 1970 Challenger sold to cover country club dues. Amber's eyes widened. "Mom? Dad? What's he talking about?" And most recently, Marcus pressed on, attempts to sell the lake house to pay for an extravagant wedding. A wedding, I might add, that's being financed with stolen money. "Stolen?" Amber shrieked. "What do you mean stolen?" "He means," I said quietly, "that they've been selling off my inheritance piece by piece. Dad's cars, his tools, everything he worked for. They sold it all without having any legal right to do so." "That's ridiculous." Stephen slammed his hand on the table. "We had every right. The will was invalid." "Was it?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Would you like to explain these?" He produced more documents, the forged letters, the fake law firm letterhead they used to convince me they had authority to sell. "Document forgery," he noted clinically, "wire fraud, conversion of trust assets, the list goes on." Mom's facade finally cracked. We needed the money. Stephen's tennis business wasn't doing well, and Amber deserved a wedding paid for with stolen funds. I cut in. "Is that what she deserved?" Amber burst into tears. "The Worthingtons will never forgive us. Bradley's mother has already ordered the ice sculptures." "Yes, we know." I sighed. "Maybe you should have checked where the money was coming from before spending it." "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "First, all sales of trust assets stop immediately. The lake house is off the market as of this morning. But Stephen started. Second, Marcus continued as if he hadn't spoken. You will provide a full accounting of every item sold, every dollar received, and every penny spent. Mr. Patterson and I will be auditing everything. You can't do this. Mom's voice rose desperately. We're family. Family? I stood up slowly. Was it family when you sold Dad's Chevelle, the car we restored together during my senior year? Was it family when you lied about Mr. Patterson retiring so you could steal my inheritance? Was it family when you tried to sell the lake house where Dad taught me to swim? Deanna, please. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled away. The really sad thing is, if you just asked, I might have helped with Amber's wedding. Not by selling Dad's legacy, but maybe we could have found another way. But you didn't ask. You just took. What about my wedding? Amber wailed. It's in 6 weeks. I suggest you start making cancellations, Marcus said firmly, unless you want to add receiving stolen property to the family's legal troubles. We can still fix this, Stephen tried, his voice wheedling. Deanna, be reasonable. Think about your mother, your sister. Stepsister, I corrected. And the time for being reasonable was before you started stealing from me. Marcus laid out more papers, court orders, injunctions, demands for repayment. You have 24 hours to sign these and begin cooperation. After that, we go to the police. The police? Mom went white. You'd send us to jail? You sent yourselves to jail, I said quietly. Every time you sold one of Dad's cars. Every time you lied about the trust. Every time you chose your new family over his wishes. They left the meeting in shambles. Mom crying, Stephen ashen-faced, Amber having a complete meltdown about her ruined wedding. I watched them go, feeling oddly empty. This was victory, but it didn't feel like one. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Marcus's team tracked down most of the cars, though some had been resold and were impossible to recover. The lake house was safe, its attempted sale nullified. Mom and Stephen had to remortgage their house to start repaying what they'd stolen. Amber's wedding was canceled, and with it her engagement. Apparently, Bradley Worthington IA's family had no interest in being associated with criminals. Their word, not mine. She moved back in with her mother, her dreams of social climbing shattered. Mr. Patterson helped me set up proper oversight of the trust, ensuring no one could ever steal from it again. When I finally walked through Dad's garage, now partially refilled with recovered cars, I felt his presence stronger than ever. The 1957 Bel Air still sat in a corner, waiting to be restored. I ran my hand along its fender, remembering all the hours Dad and I had spent working on it together. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I protected what you built. I wished it hadn't cost me my family. But then again, maybe they were never really my family to begin with. Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't lie to you. Family doesn't try to take what someone worked their whole life to build. 1 year later, I finally graduated from engineering school. The ceremony was small, just me, my professors, and a few friends from the auto shop. Mom sent a card. I returned it unopened. The lake house has become my weekend retreat, a place where I can work on cars in peace, surrounded by the memories of the person who taught me everything important about life. The value of hard work, the importance of integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Sometimes late at night, I sit in Dad's old garage, surrounded by the cars we love together, and I know I made the right choice. Some things are worth more than money. Legacy, honor, truth. Mom and Stephen never understood that. Last week, I finished restoring the Bel Air. As I took it for its first drive, the engine purring exactly the way Dad taught me it should, I felt at peace. They may have taken some things from me, but they couldn't take what mattered most. The knowledge, the memories, the love of something real and honest and true. The legal battles aren't quite over. There are still assets to recover, money to be repaid. Mom occasionally tries to reach out, usually when she needs something. I let those calls go to voicemail. Some people say I was too harsh, that family deserves forgiveness. Maybe they're right. But as I sit in my father's restored garage, surrounded by the legacy he entrusted to me, I know that forgiveness has to be earned. It can't be stolen, like everything else they tried to take. Dad always said every car has a story. Mine is about betrayal and justice, about standing up for what's right even when it hurts. But mostly it's about honoring the person who taught me that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The trust comes into my full control next year when I turn 25. By then, the garage will be completely restored, every car back where it belongs. And maybe then, with time and distance, I'll be ready to think about forgiveness. But for now, I'm content to be my father's daughter, keeper of his legacy, protector of the dreams he built one car at a time. Some might call it just a collection of old cars and a lake house. But to me, it's everything my father was: honest, hardworking, true. And that's worth more than all the wedding ice sculptures in the world.